Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Recording this from my home. It's a little bit different. Tzidkas Hatzadik Samach Daled gave the regular shiur yesterday, but due to technical difficulties, it did not record. And I know there's some of you there that are following this carefully, so I decided to, at least maybe in a shorter form, learn this Tzidkas Hatzadik together. Here Reb Tzadok tells us a Yesod Gadol, a very, very important principle, and that is, and I read the first line, Pa'amim, there are times, Sheroya Beverur, that one sees very, very clearly in their life, Shashem Yisparach Messiah Umaskim Imasa. Sometimes we make a decision and we travel on a journey to accomplish something, and could be at the beginning we weren't sure if it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. So we make a decision to do it, and it just works. Everything just goes so perfectly, and chick-chock, everything is happening and falling into place, and you sort of get a feeling of validation or reassurance that Hashem must be agreeable to what I decided, because he's helping me so much. So many things in life go with difficulty, and we don't know clearly what all that's about, but if something is going well, that would be a sign to me that I'm doing the right thing. And this is the scenario that Reb Tzadok puts us in, and he says, Pamim Shiro Beverur Shashem Yisparach Messiah Yamaskim Imasav. In Kolza, nevertheless, says the Tzidkas Hatzadik, Eino Raya Ki Maisav Yesharim Be'emes. The fact that everything is going easy for you and going well and you're being very successful is no proof at all that what you're doing is correct. Sometimes things go very, very well, and he even goes on to call it siyata d'shmaya. You have real apparent help from the heavens, but it doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing. So why am I having success then? And the answer is, Al Zeret Derech Zeh Nemar, on this the Torah says, Pasuk in Yeshayahu, Madrichecha Baderech Telech, that you will be led correctly along the way you want to go. The Darshu Rabbi Seinuzal, and the Gemara tells us, Makos Baderech Sha'adam Rotza Lelech Modlichen Oso, that when a person really wants to do something, you will not only be successful in it, but Hashem will actually molichno, so will actually help you along the way. He'll seemingly hold your hand to accomplish what you set out to accomplish. But that's because it's a derech she'adam rotza lelech, because it's the path that a person wants to take. It does not necessarily mean that what you want is what Hashem wants. The biggest proof in this, of course, is from one of the sources that the Gemara brings, and that's the story of Bilam. Bilam was approached to curse the Jewish people by the kings of Moab, and he said, I have to ask Hashem. He asks God whether he should embark on this journey to curse the Jewish people or not, and Hashem says, no, lo telech imam, don't go. Don't go. But then when Bilam perseveres and he asks Hashem yet again, and more kings of Moab and the governors of Moab come to ask him to do this, Hashem says, go ahead. And seemingly, according to the Parsha, he helps him, even miraculously, go on this derech. So from Bilam we can see that even though you're clearly doing the wrong thing, as Bilam was doing, you're still getting the help from the Shemayim, the siyata d'shmaya, to succeed in your journey. And this is, in the words of the Gemara observed this phenomenon and said, you know what? It's not because you're doing the right thing that you're being successful, but it's rather because that's what you really want to do. And b'derech she'adam rotza lelech molichno. So this is unto itself a frightening concept. It means to say that there really is no indication that you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. Even if miracles will happen and the sea will split before you, it still doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing. And how's a person to know what the right thing is and what the right thing isn't? And the answer is, the only way to know is to really look into the Torah and do some self-examination and find out that it's coming from the right place and make a proper decision, and not base the validity of that decision on the success that comes forth from it. This is a fantastic yesod. And Reb Tzadok goes on to bring 3 examples of this through the Gemara, different cases in the Torah that are not in the Gemara in Makkos Yud Aleph, and tells us that this is the way it works. But also don't take any signs from heaven on this one. I want to mention that it is a well-quoted Memra, Pitgam, that B'derech she'adam rotze leilech malichin oso, that the way that a person wants to go, B'derech she'adam rotze malichin oso, and the Pitgam to this is that ein davar omed mipnei haratzon, that there really is nothing that stands before one's will to accomplish that thing, which seems like it's pretty much the same idea. If you want to accomplish it, you'll accomplish it even if it's wrong. But I just want to point out that scholars have looked and have never found any source for this very, very famous saying of ein davar omed mipnei haratzon, nothing stands before your will. I don't even know if it's a Jewish saying. I don't even know if it's a true saying, but it's always quoted. Today you can look in Google or Grok or wherever you want to look and find out. In fact, maybe they missed some medrash or something. No, apparently, it doesn't say anywhere that ein davar omed mipnei haratzon. What it does say, though, and I just want to point this out, is it says in the Zohar in Truma Daf Kuf Samach Beis Amud Beis. Here the Zohar says a little bit of a different terminology, perhaps the same idea, perhaps not. But the Zohar says that Kol Milan da Alma Leitalion Ella Berusa, that whatever happens in this world, Kol Milan da Alma, all earthly matters, Leitalion Ella Berusa, all depend on a person's ratzon. Sounds similar, right? In other words, ein davar omed mipnei haratzon is what's usually said, but what it actually says is all matters of this world depend or are totally on reusa. Reusa means ratzon. If I look at the Hebrew translation of that in the Masech Midvash, he says very simply, Kol hadvarim sheba olam einam tluyim ela beratzon. Reusa is ratzon. But it could be that this is a bit of a different concept, and in fact, this distinction becomes part of Reb Tzadok's yesod, I think. If everything depends on ratzon, so then ratzon should work all the way through. So let me mention a couple of things. Number one is, although Bilam, who's our case in point here, our proof text, did have siyata d'shmaya to go with the Moabites and to curse the Jewish people, in reality, he couldn't curse the Jewish people. In other words, he was not successful. He was successful in going, but he was not successful in cursing. Ma'akava laikava el. He turned to the very frustrated anti-Semites around him, and he said, listen, if God doesn't want to curse them, what am I supposed to do? You know, this is what we brought you for. This is what we're paying you all the big money for. So it's very interesting. It's a bit lemechsel shlish l'revia, that on the one hand, he had all the miracles and the miracles of the donkey and everything to go, and on the other hand, in fact, he wasn't successful, which teaches us something very, very simple, that there's a level where you will get help from Hashem to do what you want to do. Maybe that might be part of free choice or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will accomplish what you set out to accomplish. He set out to curse the Jewish people, and that he had good mazel with, but when it came to actually cursing the people, he wasn't successful with that and didn't have the siyata d'shmaya for that. Just to analyze it a drop further, it works like this, that what is it that Bilam actually did want? We're talking about Ratzon. What was his Re'usei? What was he actually trying to accomplish? And here the Sfarim, specifically the Mei HaShilach, but other Sfarim also point out that what was going on in Bilam's head, according to the way Chazal understood it and knew, what was going on in his head was that here I have this ability to curse. How can I become world famous for this? How can I monetize it? How can I make this into something which the world needs? And the people who hate Jews would be very, very attracted to this midah. So he really wanted to get out there with his evil merchandise, his sorcery. And sure enough, Hashem helped. Hashem brought the kings of Moab to this, might have been even an obscure place, an obscure mountaintop on Moab, to meet this guru and to find out how they can curse the Jewish people. So his wish came true. In that sense, his wish came true, and the covet and perhaps the like Rashi says, the compensation that he would receive indeed came true. What didn't come true was the part that he didn't have perhaps such a big rutzum in cursing the people. It was more about fame and about glory and about power, and that in fact he did receive. I want to learn with you for a moment. I have it here inside the Reb Nachman Breslover. Reb Nachman Breslover, in two places that I was able to identify, speaks not directly about this, but about the idea of machshava, what our thoughts alone can accomplish in this world, and the greatest form of thought is to really, really want something. When you want something and you put it that specifically in your mind with such desire, it has an effect. And I'm going to read to you, bear with me as I learn with you, the Sichos Haran in Samach Beis. Here the Reb Nachman says, Da, you should know, Sheyesh b'nei Adam segulos gedolos, the people, human beings, are very, very powerful. Ki yicholim lifol al yedei machshavtem ma shehem choshvim, because they can actually create something, make something happen with their thought alone. Meaning, perhaps the normal way of thinking is, well, if you want to get something done, go out and do it. So Reb Nachman is saying, sometimes you do it, and sometimes you can't do it, but you could always have machshava, thought about it, and sometimes you could accomplish things not just with your hands, or not just even with your speech, but you could actually accomplish things by not saying a word, just with your machshava alone. Fascinating. Va'afilu, and he refers, afilu hayakrus chas v'shalom. He says, even the yakrus means the economic crisis, the inflation that they were going through. Hu ba mi machshavas b'nei adam. It all comes from machshava. Probably, if you look into this historically, in the time that Reb Nachman lived, in the early 1800s. So, because of the Napoleon Wars and because of the natural disasters, and not to mention the pogroms, and it was very, very difficult for the Jewish communities, the little Jewish communities, to find even food to put on the table. And if they did, they had to pay a fortune of money. That's called yakris. And Reb Nachman refers to this struggle and the suffering that the people had in a number of places. So he writes here, that also comes from the machshava. How so? Because if you are totally focused with your mind on a particular item, what do we mean completely focused? Kol ha'bechina sheyesh b'machshava means your whole mind, not it crossed my mind or somewhere in the back of my head. We're talking about your whole mind. Pnimi is the inner part of it. Chitzoni is the outer part of it. Shara b'chinas kulam ad nakuda. Everything that I've got in terms of machshava is focused on a particular goal. If a person can enact and utilize that very, very focused intention, and without any bilbul, no confusion involved, no, maybe there's two sides, maybe I'm not 100% sure. No. If you 100% want it, they are creating a situation that will be. What an amazing Rav Tzaddik. This is similar to what the New Age philosophers have observed in terms of manifesting that somehow or another. I don't know if they claim to understand the science of it or the godliness of it, but have observed a phenomenon where somehow or another, with my thought, with my machshava, I'm able to create a certain reality in life. So I knew this was Reb Nachman. Even if you're thinking in deep detail, thinking complete detail as to what it is that he wants, it will happen. That's Reb Nachman in Sichos Haran Samach Beis. In the Likutei Moran's different sefer of Rabbi Nachman, in Kuf Tzaddik Gimel, he kind of furthers this idea, and he says this. Again, you should know, Shahamachshava yesh lo tokev gadol, very similar words, that the machshava is very powerful. And if you can really go get your mind on something and think something very visual, I presume he means to visualize it very, very clearly, he can actualize it. Gives an example. Let's say a person uses all of his power of thought to envision or to all of his power of thought is to focus on money. I want to be rich. Now, it's interesting because of the previous passage of Tzadok, he's talking about the general inflation of the world. Here he's talking about Shiel lo mammon. Like, I want to be a rich man. It will work. And this is true of everything. The only thing is, you have to know Hargash's technique, that it has to be completely thought without any emotion involved. Because maybe thoughts, emotions rather, will cloud one's thoughts. And your machshava has to be so strong until you could actually be moser nefesh with your machshava. And I'm not going to read all of this because it's wordy, but I want to tell it to you. He explains, according to this, the story of Rabbi Akiva, the very famous story of Rabbi Akiva was one of the martyrs of the Jewish people. It was martyred by the Romans, as everybody knows. And the Talmud tells us this fascinating story, that as he was being killed and he was allowed to have some of his students around him, I believe this happened in Caesarea, as he was being killed, so he started to say the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. His student said to him, Rabbi, Ad Kan? Like, because he was saying a long Echad, Ad Kan? And then Rabbi Akiva answered them. Before I get to the answer, which is the main part of what Rabbi Nachman is bringing, I just want to explain the question. What do they want from him? What am I supposed to do? So the Arizal explains that, if you have all the kavanas in the first pasuk of the Shema v'yahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav b'chol nafshecha, etc., you can do any miracle you want. and he could have just ended the martyrdom right there. He could have, all the Romans could have just disappeared or exploded, or something could have happened. And on this, his students asked him, Rebbe, ad kan, is that as far as you're going to go? Like, why don't you do something? They were having such sorrow over the fact that they were watching their Rebbe be killed, and they said, ad kan. Reb Nachman quotes the rest of the Gemara, and which is Rabbi Akiva's answer. Rabbi Akiva's answer was that he said, Kol Yamai Yitztarti al Pasuk Zeh B'chol Levavcha B'chol Nafshecha B'chol Miyadecha. The Torah says that sometimes you have to be willing to give your life up, al Kiddush Hashem. And my whole life, he means his whole life since I guess he started saying Kriya Shema, he's been thinking about this. Wow, that would be an amazing thing to die al Kiddush Hashem. Why to be al Kiddush Hashem? So, because here he was going against the law, teaching Torah in public to thousands and thousands of people. The Romans did not want him to be teaching Torah. They wanted to end that whole idea of teaching Torah. So they, that's why they were killing him. But his whole life, he was thinking, look, I'm willing to die to teach Torah. And he told the students, Kol Yamai Nitztarti al Pasuk. I'm always thinking about Chol Levavcha V'chol Nafshecha V'chol Miyadecha, that perhaps I should die. I'm willing to die. Achshav Shebo Liyadi Lo Yakem Meno, so now is the real thing. I shouldn't do it. This is the mitzvah. Meaning, let me do the mitzvah. Let me do the mitzvah. Rabbi Nachman explains that what this means is that Rabbi Akiva, every time he said the Shema, visualized in his mind what it would be like to die al Kiddush Hashem. He is specific about this. Achaya mitztayer margish mamish yisure hamisa mamish. He used to feel the pains of death every time he said Shema. Kilu cyclin v'sarfanoi say mamish, as if they were stoning him or they were burning him. He imagined all this. Blishum hefresh. And that's what he means, not just that every day I thought about this. Kol yamai mitztayer. I had tsar over the fact. What was the tsar? The tsar was I could feel the stones falling on my head. I could feel the fire. Umargish mamish yisure misa mamish kilu cyclin v'sarfanoi say mamish. That's what he felt. And v'kibelti b'daiti, and I accepted this. One day, this is going to happen. Reb Nachman gives a caveat. He says, if one goes through this, I don't suggest anybody tries this at home, but this was a specific situation of Rabbi Akiva at that time. He says, if one does go through this type of a thought pattern, you got to make sure that you get out in time, because otherwise you actually will die. And if you feel like you're actually going to die, Rabbi Akiva, wake up. That you shouldn't die in the wrong time. In other words, you still have Torah to teach, you still have Talmidim to teach. So you can go through this. You can actually do the mitzvah Kiddush Hashem through your mind without dying and get out of there quickly. It reminds me a little bit of what Rabbi Yaacov Haber writes in Hilchos Kiddush Hashem, which you'll find in the back of his siddur. He says that, as an example, I don't know if it's the same thing, but similar, if someone was meant to be put to death for not worshiping Avodah Zarah or not doing Gilui Arayos, or to make a Kiddush Hashem, and they're right up there. They're ready to hang him, and then something happens and they don't. But he accepted it in his mind. So Rabbi Yaacov Haber writes that you have fulfilled the mitzvah Kiddush Hashem. You don't actually have to actually die to fulfill the mitzvah Kiddush Hashem. Just the very fact that you went through this in your mind. So it's a very similar thing. Rabbi Yaacov Haber writes that once one dies al Kiddush Hashem, they become a holy person, and you'll never have any tsar again. That was the last tsar you'll ever have. So it's fascinating that he's like the Walking Dead, if you will, in the sense that I've done the mitzvah of dying al Kiddush Hashem without dying, because I was completely expecting to die and ready to die, and I visualized this death. So because of that, I become an Ish Kadosh, and I have whatever that means. I become a big Rebbe. I can do miracles, and what he says actually is that you won't feel any tsar anymore. That was the last of your tsar. And all of this adds up to what Rabbi Nachman's point is. His point is that when it came time to really dying al Kiddush Hashem, Rabbi Akiva said, let it go. Let it happen. This is not a new thing for me. This is not a new tsar. Maybe it's not even tsar at all. I went through the tsar already. What this is just actual. This is actually happening now, and since it's happening, let the Romans do it. The point being, going back for a minute, is that thinking something or visualizing something in your mind is making it actually happen. Going back to Reb Tzadok and what we're talking about, I think it's a similar idea. If a person, if you really have a ratzon to do something, so you have created in your mind a certain reality, whether it's good or whether it's bad. The reality doesn't have to be a good reality. If one would, lust in their mind, that's a bad reality. Whatever you do creates a certain reality, and in that reality, because it's your ratzon, you will create a situation where not only it is what it is, but how does it become what it is? The answer is because Molichno, so Hashem will guide him along. Which is an amazing thought, whether one's doing good or whether one's doing bad. But certainly, just because you want it, and just because you've created a certain reality where God will help you, it doesn't really mean that you're doing, it doesn't mean at all that you're doing the right thing. I want to share with you for a minute the Gemara tells us the source of this idea is Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna Amar Rav Huna Amri La Amar Rav Huna Amar Rabbi Elazar. This comes from Elazar bin Atayra bin Anaviyah bin Aksuvim, that this idea was observed, this idea of wherever way you want to go, Hashem will help you. This is observed both in the Torah, in the Nevi'im, and in the Ksuvim. You find this all over the place, meaning it's a true observation that cuts across the whole Torah. The Marsha, Yud Aleph on Beis, says the following: Ein bezeh ba'mefarshim. There are a lot of commentaries about this idea that Hashem will help you along, do whatever you want to do. Ve'ena gam ani chelki, so I want to say my piece also. It doesn't say, says the Marsha, a keen observation, it doesn't say in this Gemara, Chazal never said that God will hold your hand through whatever you want. It doesn't say that. It says molichin oso, that's a plural. They will help you. Who's the they? Says the Marsha, we've said this many times. Shekol machshava v'dibor u'maisa ha'adam. Again, we're starting off like Rabbi Nachman, perhaps the same thing, that every thought, every word, everything a person does, hine, here's the new part, hu bare lo malach. He creates with this a malach, an angel. Every time you think something, certainly every time you've said something, you create an angel. This should not be new to us. because many pages in the Nefesh HaChaim, Rav Chaim Volozhin, is devoted and dedicated to this particular point. L'fi inyanai, and depending on what you're thinking, im latov, im lara, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Okay, Namar, that's what Chazal mean. Not that God helps you. This is what Chazal mean when they say b'derech she'adam roitze leilech, she'harishus biyada adam. A person has the permission, mimenu yisbarach baruch hu, from Hashem, she'akol b'dei shamayim chutz mi'yer shamayim, to make your own free choice. Avol kafi ritzono v'daito shel adam, and according to what you're thinking, unbelievable, fascinating Marsha. Marsha says that when we think something, when we say something, we create a malach. That malach is going to be beside you with it all through the episode, from the thought to do evil to the actual evil, from the thought to do a wonderful thing, and all the way to the end. The malach is there. And there's malachim which are good, and there are malachim which are bad. You know, everybody knows when you come home from shul on Friday night, the Gemara tells us that you're accompanied by two malachim, echad toiv, echad ra, looking to see if your table is set for Shabbos, etc. These are the malachim. You know, there's a lot of malachim, and these malachim are the ones that actually get things done. And when the Torah says ki malacha v'yitzavalach lishmarcha b'kol ra, that your malachim, Hashem sends you malachim. In that case, it's good. Lishmarcha b'kol ra means a person has livui malachim at all times, and these malachim are not simply created by Hashem. Okay, you take care of Beryl or Shmerel or Joe or Al. These malachim are created by the person themselves, and they're used to accompany that person. And with this, the Maharsha explains, this is what happened with Bilam. It was malach, malach, malach. It doesn't say molich osai, it says molichin oso. That Hashem is not per se the one who guides the act of, in Bilam's case, cursing the Jewish people, but what actually happened is the malachim, and you look through the story in Parshas Balak, it's malach, 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 it's all about malachim. The malachim were accompanying him and helping him. When it comes to actually cursing the Jewish people, that's already in God's hands. You can't just go ahead and curse the people. Here we are, we're here today. But you can actually have, to use a radical term, the siyata d'shmaya, to do a terrible thing like standing on a mountaintop and cursing the people. You will get to that mountaintop. You will be paid to be on that mountaintop. You will be given all the equipment necessary. Will you succeed? No. Netzach Yisrael, lo yishakir. Rav Tzadok takes us to his proofs. I'm just going to mention now one of them. Tzadok brings us to the very, very well-known Gemara, very, very fundamental Gemara, where the Gemara speaks about lo bashamayim hi. And when you just think about that for a minute, you'll see it's going to be really the same concept, lo bashamayim hi. It's not from the heavens. Torah is not from the heavens, meaning Torah is what we do. And the Gemara tells a story about the Chachamim that had a certain kind of oven, tanur shalach hanoi, and they were asked to paskin on this oven. Doesn't seem like it should be a big deal, but it became a big deal. Is this oven something which can become tamei or not? Just briefly, an oven can become tamei, an oven like this, but this is talking about an oven that was broken down into a bunch of pieces and then put back together, like, you know, and then once it's broken, it can't be makabel tumah, but now it's fixed, reconstructed, can it be makabel tumah or not be makabel tumah? That was the technical question that was going on in the Gemara in Bava Metzia, and the Chachamim said, yes, it's tamei. It's tamei. Rabbi Eliezer, who was a Gadol Adar, he said, this is not tabei, don't tell me about that oven. It's tahar. It's a reconstructed oven. It's shivrei kelim. It's not. It's tahar. They said, listen, yachid v'rabim, halacha karabim. You're entitled to your point of view, but the halacha is that the majority rules, and the majority is saying is the chachamim. So the chachamim said that it's tamei, so it's tamei. That's what the Gemara tells us. Rabbi Eliezer, wanting to prove his point, began to execute a number of miracles. He made a tree jump in front of them. He made the water of the brook go in a different direction. He moved the walls of the Beis HaMedrash they were sitting in. There was a number of miracles that he did. Ad Shamad Rabbi Yeshua, Raglav Rabbi Yeshua stood on his feet, and he said, no. You can do all the miracles in the world you want, but loy b'shamayim hi, the halacha is with us. I mean, if he was right, he was right. So Rabbi Tzadok says, and this is a little bit different than the way most of us learn that famous Gemara. Rabbi Tzadok says, what they were really saying was, not that it's in our hands and not in heaven's hands, and we don't care how right you are because we have the majority. No, they were saying, just because you can do miracles, it doesn't make you right. Just because you can move trees and make water go and defy gravity, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily making the right decision. What they saw in that was some, siyata d'shmaya that the tzaddik Rabbi Eliezer had to do miracles, but it has nothing to do with the Torah. And this is exactly what we're learning here, very similar to, you could go right back to the Chumash, where the Chumash says that if a Navi, if a Navi will come and perform some kind of a miracle for you, poof, he lights up a dark room, whatever this prophet does. But then he says to go against Moshe Rabbeinu. So not only we don't listen to him, but we kill the guy because he's a Navi Sheker. So he's a false prophet, but he did a miracle. So the answer is miracles don't make you right. Miracles just say you really, really want to make this happen. So that's a fascinating thing. Rav Tzadok does give a caveat here, and he says that there has to be some, in order to get this kind of siyata d'shmaya for the wrong thing, there has to be something within you which is connecting to the Shemayim. And he says that there was. He says that it seems like Bilam may have somewhere in his crooked brain thought that look, the Bnei Yisrael need a prosecutor. Every legal case needs an attorney which is defending, an attorney which is prosecuting, a kategor and a sanegar. So I'll take the position of kategor. We need that anyway, like a Sarah Mishtaleach. But in any case, he wasn't successful. The Yesod is, and neither was Rabbi Eliezer. The Gemara says that Pagash is Eliyahu Navi. That when the story happened with the Chachamim, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, they met Eliyahu Navi and they asked Eliyahu Navi, what was HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing during this story? They're debating the truth. Miracles are happening. God's got something to do with that. But at the end, the majority ruled because they thought it was right. So Eliyahu Navi says that, what God was doing at that time? He was saying. Maybe he was even singing it. Nitzchuni banai, nitzchuni banai. My children won. My sons won. That the emes is the emes, and it's not dependent on the supernatural. So, okay, what is the main message of Rav Tzadok here? The main message of Rav Tzadok is that don't be fooled by miracles, even if they're genuine. Even if science can't defend them or explain them. Don't be fooled by success in certain areas. There's only one way to go. And that's nitzchunei banai. That's the way of the Torah, which is the way of the truth, which is the way of really introspecting and thinking, what is the real truth here, getting my whole emotions out of it. And if I can really do the right thing, then of course we'll have siyata d'shmaya. Sometimes God acts in peculiar ways and tests the truth too. But don't be fooled by anything superficial. Those, as the Maharsha says, those are malachim. Talking about me. Yitzchuni banai, Yitzchuni banai. I want you to come up with the truth. A good Erev Shabbos.